Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcabbage. We're back for another edition of the Thyroid Answers podcast. We have another guest today. His name is Mike Feldstein, and he is the owner and an air quality expert, but he's the owner of a company called Jaspr, which I met him at a conference a couple months ago. I've been looking at air filtration systems. I talk about how the importance of air quality is in my book, The Thyroid Debacle. But listening to his company's pitch at the conference, I got one of these. I got two units actually, one for me, one for my son's house, and definitely have noticed some changes. But I thought it would be really important to bring on because air quality does have a massive impact on our overall health and well-being, and is one of the things that there's high correlation between what's in your air and the potential development of thyroid-related conditions. So, Mike, welcome to the Thyroid Answers podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. Good to see you since that event in Scottsdale.
Yeah, it was a good time. Little colder now than it was back in Scottsdale in September, but
A little
we'll
bit.
take it. So let's get a little, what's like, you're an air quality expert. Let's get a little bit of background so the listeners know who we're talking to and what makes you an expert on air quality.
Sure, man. So before getting into creating Jaspr, which is an air filtration system, I spent about 10 years doing disaster cleanup and restoration work. So floods, fires, hurricanes, power outages, ice storms, but largely focusing on floods, wildfires, and huge mold cleanups. So we weren't really the guys that you would call if you had, a kitchen, a little leak in your bathroom or a little roof leak. We were specifically going to the most impacted parts of the continent. So if you had fires in California, British Columbia, floods in Houston, Hurricane Harvey, we were going to the most damaged parts of the country and continent, and going to where the situation was worse. So, and then when it was in between disasters, I was consulting on air quality. So if people were sick at home, they didn't know why, just like unwell, whether it was chronic fatigue, inflammation, a number of things, just not great. Tried everything, tried meds and supplements and blood testing and allergy stuff and diet, nutrition, sleep. And then eventually they went on a trip, a vacation. It could have been a camping trip, a hiking trip, or just got out of the country, and then they felt great. Then they came back home. They thought they were healed. All I needed was a little bit of vitamin D, a little bit of nature, and they would go back home and found themselves sick again and have this aha moment: is my home making me sick? We were the guys that you would call to come in and be like a MRI for your home. We were what functional medicine is for the body. We were that for the home environment. So we were looking at water and mold and air quality and testing everything, seeing what was in the air, and then giving people a plan to deal with that. And that didn't usually mean hacking up your walls for mold remediation. That meant let's deal with the air, let's deal with the water. And most homes, just modern homes, they're not built very well. So the architect, the builder, the developer, they don't usually sit around and say, how do we make the healthiest home for the family that's going to occupy it? They're more of saying, how many homes can we make, how fast, how cheap, and how much can we sell it for? So unfortunately, we then have to because the HVAC system is the lungs of your home, and it's not really designed to optimize, the lighting in your home is not designed to support a good circadian rhythm, and then the water, and then the air. So we would come in and give people a simple plan of action to improve the health of their indoor environment. I like to use this simple analogy. If you have a fish tank and some fish in there, do you scrub the perimeter bowl or do you filter and change the water? So we're busy scrubbing our surfaces, we're mopping, we're vacuuming, we're wiping countertops, we're dusting. But the bowl of water, which is the air in our home, we often aren't changing it and we're not cleaning it. So you can clean the surfaces all you want, but if you don't clean the air itself, you're going to have a pretty dirty indoor environment. So that's kind of the 2-3 minute background on the range of things that I saw and the perspectives that I had that led me to wanting to make better air filters.
So I guess everybody would say, well, I've got it HVA system. I've got filters. I change my filters fairly regularly. Isn't that good enough?
Yeah, so the reason that it's called a furnace filter, which is funny we're having this call, I was 5 minutes late to start the podcast because we're doing a bunch of HVAC stuff here right now. It's called a furnace filter for a reason. It's not called an air filter, it's called a furnace filter. And it's because that filter is for your furnace, it's not for your lungs. So a lot of people find themselves upgrading their furnace filters. It's funny, the HVAC guys got here today, and there's a 4-inch media filter, and they noticed that we don't have any filter in there, and we only have the cheapest, thinnest filter that you can buy, like a Merv 8. And they're like, "Hey, why are you doing that?" And then they realize, "Oh, this guy's got an air filter in every room of his house, but I don't use my HVAC system to filter my air. It wasn't designed for that." So because it wasn't engineered for that, that's why a furnace doesn't come with a big, thick filter. When you put a big, thick filter on it, you really decrease the airflow. It creates a big pressure drop. So now all of a sudden your heating and cooling will be less effective, less efficient. You'll have less fresh air. You'll have less airflow. You can burn out the motor of your unit. So by increasing, like there's no part of your furnace that's designed to be an air filtration system. It's just not spec for that. Also, if a furnace system, HVAC system is running efficiently, it should only be running seasonally, 20 to 40% of the time, depending on how well insulated your home is, because especially in the spring and the fall, but when it should be only turning on and off to heat and cool. It should be running minimally. And when it's not running, your air is not being filtered. And even when it is running, you're not able to focus the cleaning efforts, meaning like your crawl space or your basement is going to have the same amount of air filtration as your baby's bedroom or your bedroom. This doesn't make any sense. I want clean air everywhere, but I want the cleanest air where I'm sleeping and where I'm spending the most time. So it theoretically, if you're building like a custom home from scratch and you really prioritize environmental health, you can build a system in that is optimized for air filtration, but that's just not the way most homes and buildings are built.
Got it. So I think most of us have kind of grown up that, hey, here's the furnace, here's the HVAC unit. We just changed the filter and that should be good enough. What's a sign for somebody, like a physical sign or an indicator that what they're doing in their home isn't probably good enough? We'll talk about signs and symptoms later, but physically, how would you know that maybe I need to do something higher quality to clean my air?
That's a good question, actually. So there's a few things. Number one, do you have dust? And if so, how much? Because my house basically accumulates almost no dust. And I'm in Austin, where it can get quite dusty. There's a fair bit of construction. West Texas, there's a desert not too far away. Does your home have a lot of indoor dust? Because newsflash, the dust is not coming from the media cabinet or your nightstand table. That dust is coming from the air. So if that dust was being filtered in your air, it wouldn't be landing on your surfaces. So how dusty is your home is a very good visible way of triaging. The dust is a symptom of poor indoor air quality. And if you look outside on the sidewalk, on your driveway, on your patio furniture, you won't see dust. You might see dirt, but you won't see dust, household dust, because it's really an indoor problem. When you have poor air filtration, when you have poor air flow, so like air circulation, you're going to have a dust problem. The best air purifier in the world is nature. Unfortunately, we left that stuff outside. So trees, wind, UV light from the sun, and rain is like the most incredible filtration system of all time. But when we build these airtight homes, insulate them really well, what we're trying to do is keep the outside and trap ourselves inside. So what happens is we still get the outdoor pollutants because our indoor air comes from outside, but we also have all these indoor pollutants from cooking, cleaning products, off-gassing from all the building materials, whether it's the drywall, the paint, the carpet, the fire retardants in your furniture, the electronics, just like everything is off-gassing. You bring in a new mattress or a couch and it stinks like formaldehyde. That's because it is. So broadly speaking, a visible symptom would be dust. Another visible symptom would be like mold and mildew accumulation. That would be a humidity problem. Then there's also not a visible symptom, but there's really great CO2 detectors CO2 sensors. So they're maybe $150, $200. I use one called an AirNet 4. There's another one called an Inkbird. They're like a couple $100 on Amazon. I travel with mine. I keep it everywhere I go. The battery lasts 4 years. So also just seeing how high your carbon dioxide is. Because I've tested the air in thousands of homes, I'm well calibrated. So for example, a really fun thing to do is if you're outside with like 4 or 5 people, even inside, you say everybody write down the temperature that you think it is right now on a piece of paper, and then everybody flip it over at the same time. I've had it before where everybody is within 1 degree. And usually everybody's within 2 or 3 degrees. Like nobody ever says 90 and someone else says 60. Like no one even says 80 and someone else says 65. You're usually within a couple degrees, often like 1 or 2 degrees. And then you realize, like, whoa, all of our temperature sensors in our skin, we're really well calibrated. And if you think about it, when you're in the rainforest, you can feel humidity. If you're in the desert, you can feel dry. You're in Pennsylvania. In the winter, you know what dry feels like. And in the summer, you know what humid feels like. That's because you got humidity sensors built into your skin. Now, if you started looking at the relative humidity every day, just as often as you look at the temperature outside, you're going to know the humidity within 1 or 2% as well. Just the way the only reason you've calibrated your temperature sensor is because you typically look at the temperature inside and outside very often. So you know what it feels like. So my CO2 sensors are well calibrated. I can usually go into a room and be like, based on how hard my lungs are working, I can tell you if it's 700 CO2 or 1300. And I'll usually be within about 100. So when you carry like a CO2 monitor with you, which also gives you temperature and humidity, and just kind of train yourself to be calibrated, you'll know very quickly when you walk into a restaurant, someone's house, or a building, you'll have a good idea of what's the temperature, what's the humidity, and what's the CO2 just with your own body sensors. But dust is the most visible one.
So let's talk about what are the things that what's the things in the air that create the biggest challenges that most people aren't aware of? You talked about CO2, but what are some of the other things that are really more problematic that are in the air, in the environment that we should be filtering out on a regular basis, but most people wouldn't be aware of?
So I think a cool way to think about it, and it's funny, like, if you look at water or food, if food, water, and our air are like our big three intakes every day to keep us alive, of course, there's the sun and there's other things, but food, water, air are kind of the big three. And our food system is heavily regulated. We have to cook a lot of food to make it clean and safe. Restaurants are inspected. The city has standards for water. Unfortunately, they have to kind of over chlorinate to make it not filled with bacteria, but it's like a fairly heavily regulated process. When it comes to the air, there's really no process. We're just breathing it straight from the tap, essentially. We're not really filtering it most of the time. So, with our food, you're trying to buy organic, you're trying to cook it, you're trying to use good oils. With your water, you're trying to get good water, maybe avoid microplastics. With our air, the thing that we consume the most of, people are the most unaware of and doing the least to optimize. So if you look at there's outdoor air pollution and then there's indoor air pollution. So your outdoor air pollution is, everything from pollen, cedar, mold. So there's like the allergen category, organic things that make us feel not great. Then you have, chemicals, whether it's the exhaust from the cars, whether it's the rubber. You have to change your tires every few years because the tire gets worn down. It's like, where do you think the tires go? Restaurants, factory, industry, all of it. So that's just your general outdoor pollution. Wildfire, smoke. Then you have indoor air pollution. Indoor air pollution, and all those outdoor air pollutants come inside. So it's not like those aren't a factor inside. It's actually worse inside than outside because at least outside we have nature's great air purifier doing something about it. When those particulates come inside, we don't have a process in our homes to filter it. So same thing with mold. You don't really see mold growing outside because there's fresh air, there's sun. It's a problem. The mold's pissed off that you kind of trapped it inside in a little home that's wrapped in vapor barrier. Now inside we can also have mold indoors from leaking in high humidity. But we have cooking. That's a big one. We have cleaning products. We have personal care products. So what is that putting in the air? So VOCs is sort of the catch-all term, which means volatile organic compounds. And this is everything. That's formaldehyde and benzene and toluene. And there's thousands of different volatile organic compounds that make up everything in air. Just basically just saying chemicals.
These are all the
Um,
things that we put in our products to make them smell wonderful.
yes. I call
And
air
more, but
fresheners air makeup.
yeah. Like when somebody plugs in the thing to change the air, they plug these things in. We think,
Those
oh,
little
they
Glade plugins.
yeah.
Dude, when I was doing mold restoration, in the mold certification training program, they would teach us when we're done remediating a home after a flood, mold, fire, whatever. They would the safety stores would basically sell us these big jugs of lemon deodorizer. By the way, there's no lemon in there. Uh, and they would teach us that if it smells clean, the customer will think it must be clean. And they would say perception is reality. Now, the same people that would train us on mold are the same people that teach the janitorial companies, the steam cleaners. So why do you think all of the cleaning products are so fragrant? You know, when the housekeeper leaves, when the cleaning company leaves, it smells so clean.
Mm-hmm.
It should actually smell neutral. It should smell closer to nothing, but it doesn't. It smells like cleaning products. What is cleaning products? It's just a bunch of chemicals. And it's designed to be super fragrant, so your brain associates those smells with clean. It couldn't be further from clean.
Right. We do the same thing with our laundry detergent, our dryer sheets, like everything. And
Our soaps.
yeah. And unfortunately, those are all the things that are potentially problematic. I know in looking through the literature, I mean, they talk about the big six things that trigger chronic health issues, the VOCs being definitely those in that category, but they talk about carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, and they talked about fine particle matter
Yes.
2.5.
PM 2.5. Let's go
So
there.
let's talk about what it is, because when we start to take a look at the literature, there's lots of papers. And for the listener, this is really important. You're thinking, hey, I thought this was like a thyroid podcast. Why are we talking about this? But the literature is really showing that these particulates, and I'm gonna let Mike get into this, but these are things that can trigger immune inflammatory processes and lead to thyroid related disorders. There's a ton of papers on this stuff. So Mike, let's talk about maybe these. I'm not sure how familiar you are with those other chemicals, but as an expert, you probably know those. And then we'll definitely talk about that, the PM 2.5.
Yeah, so the reason I love doing this is because you already have like a very health conscious and health aware listener base. So we don't have to start of like why health matters. So how much do you already talk about the impact of food on thyroid?
Yeah, it's part of almost every conversation to some degree. The healthy whole food based diet, like as low tox as you can get, is really important.
So everything that you guys already know about food and water, air is the same kind of concept. So, you want your food to be clean, not toxic. You want your water to be as filtered as possible, or from a spring, you want a high quality water, high quality food, and air is no difference. So, for example, people are very worried about microplastics in their water, but we're drinking a liter or 2 liters of water a day, but you're breathing 17,000 liters of air per day. Studies out of the UK show the average human breathes about one credit card worth of microplastics each week. So, everything that you're worried about getting from your food and your water, you're getting way more toxins through your air. I recently heard a stat that said 69% of all detoxification in our body happens in our lungs. And when we want to go to get, what do you call it, when you're in surgery, anesthesia,
Mm-hmm.
to be put under, they don't give you a pill or a drink. They do it through your lungs. They do it with breathing. It's the fastest way to get stuff into your bloodstream is through breathing it. So you're taking in more pollutants and more toxins and more chemicals through your lungs via breathing than anything else, because just by sheer volume, breathing 17,000 liters of air per day. So the interesting thing about PM 2.5 is it's going to be, when you talk about fine particulate, it's the particle size that we talk about most, because PM10 PM3, these are larger particles like dead skin cells and hair and smoke. Well, smoke can be smaller. Um, the reason why PM 2.5 is the most looked at from an air quality and a health perspective is because it's small enough to enter your lungs and your bloodstream, but too large for you to breathe in and out. So if something's like, when people are really worried and looking at air filters, it goes down to 0.001 microns. With a lot of that stuff, we're not that as concerned about it, and it's not as reported on because we breathe in, we breathe that stuff in and out. It's too small to get trapped in your lungs. So PM 2.5 is that unfortunate size particle where it's small enough to get in and too big to get out. So PM 2.5 it's a number of particles, but that's going to happen when you're cooking. That's going to happen when you're cleaning. That's going to happen from wildfire smoke. That can happen from general pollution. And that's why a really good air filter, even though it's not the only factor, it's what we typically use to control the fan speed because it's the most important particle size. And it's the thing that's going to get triggered the most often, whether that's from a candle, incense, sage, cooking, your neighbor down. Like, I see crazy stories people send us. My mom actually sent me a video. She was staining the picnic table about 200 feet from their place in Ontario and just opening the door for a few seconds, the PM 2.5 on the Jaspr went up. Often people are trying to figure out what's the source. It could be your neighbor 20 homes down the street having their contractor in the backyard or on the driveway cutting 2x4s or tiles for a renovation. You think that's just down there and outside, but where does your indoor air come from? And a good way to paint this picture for someone, if you're at the beach and you see someone like 50 feet away spraying that aerosol sunscreen, you can smell it almost in all directions. Even if the wind is blowing the other way, it's wild. That means everybody in that, and you were 200 foot this way. So in like a 500-foot radius, everybody sprayed this quick spray of this aerosol can. And it just really goes to show you how much a pollutant fills the volume of air. Another way to think about it is if you take your bathtub, fill it with water, you could have 30 gallons or more in a bathtub, maybe 50 gallons, a lot of water in a bathtub. And you take 2 or 3 drops of red food coloring. Within seconds, all of the water is equally distributed with that red. That's why our oceans get polluted. So air moves very similarly to water. So when you pollute a little bit of air, it's pretty widespread, the impact. So when I've tested a lot, if you have like a 4,000 square foot house and a little kitty uses the litter box in the basement on one side of the house, almost within seconds, if that furnace is running, the air sensors in every room have elevated particulate. Or when you're cooking, we have a Jaspr in our baby's bedroom on the opposite side of the house. Within seconds, when we're cooking, the Jaspers in every room are kicked up because your HVAC system is designed to mix the air. That's why most of the rooms have a return. So it's recirculating all of the air, and no, your furnace filter is not picking it up. Otherwise, the particulate wouldn't jump in every single room. So yeah, PM 2.5 is the big one. But yeah, the particulates are just all of the chemicals in your home, cooking, cleaning, general care, all that good stuff. And if you're using a vacuum without HEPA, every time you're vacuuming, it's going in one side, but all the foreign, if you smell the air kind of smells dirty when you're vacuuming, that tells you that your vacuum doesn't have a very good filter on it.
So you're vacuuming up all this particulate and the real small stuff is coming right back out of it into the air, onto the floor, whatever. So the importance of this is that all of this particulate matter that we're surrounded by every day, and it's almost impossible to escape because we're in a home. I mean, I work from home now, and so you're in that same environment over and over and over again. And we've got it from carpets, stains, paints, all these things we talked about, all the appliances, everything is off-gassing something to some degree. And right now, most people don't have anything better than a furnace filter, right, to clean the air. And I don't think a lot of people, and most people don't realize that the air quality is a potential problem because A, we haven't made a big deal of it I think the biggest thing people get concerned about air quality is mold. I mean, I want to talk to you about that a little bit later, but
Yeah.
that's become this massive issue, massive
Yeah.
problem, at least a perceived massive problem. But
Yeah.
there isn't a lot of discussion like, hey, we need to have healthier, cleaner air. So it's important. I talk about it in my book, The Thyroid Debacle, how important it is. But so if it's an issue and we need to filter it, and you have your own company. So the first part of this, we'll talk about the Jaspr system, but we've talked about what might indicate that somebody's got an issue. And I think it might be safe to say almost everybody needs some type of air filtration system in their home, especially in today's modern homes, because as you said, they wrap tight. From a health perspective, these particulates and these things we're exposed to can trigger inflammation in the system. And for the thyroid, everybody's listening to this from a health and a thyroid perspective, that
Yeah.
inflammatory process triggers reduced conversion of T4 to T3. This is documented. It triggers, as you have reduced conversion of T4 to T3, you're going to have more glucose resistance. If you have more glucose resistance, you're going to put on more body fat. You're going to have more inflammation. When you lay down at night, your sleep quality is going to go down because your soft tissues swell at night. That's why Mike was saying, hey, one of the places I want to have this is in my bedroom, because you're spending 7-8 hours a night in there. So air quality, really important. Almost everybody doesn't have an air filtration system. You have a filter on your furnace, but it's not necessarily cleaning your air. And so what I want to spend some time on is, in general, and we'll talk about the Jaspr system in a bit, but in general, what are the things, because there's so many systems out there. I think you and I had a conversation there that people don't know. I mean, good marketing can sell a really crappy product and the person wouldn't know the difference. We see that in the world of supplementation. We see that in the world of what are health foods are really just crappy food, but well marketed. So what are the key things that somebody needs to consider when they're looking for air cleaning, air filtrate, however we want to say it? But I want an air cleaning system in my house. Obviously, I've now got some Jaspr systems in, but what should somebody be looking for when they're saying, okay, I want to filter my air, I want cleaner air?
So there's two things. There's fresh air and there's clean air. And I wish I could tell you a Jaspr and an air filter is the be all end all. It's half of the battle, but the other half is we still need fresh air. So that the only way to get fresh air is by having adequate ventilation in your home. And the other thing is also just source. So first thing you can do is not wear your shoes inside. If you look at one of the biggest things that pollutes your air is dirty surfaces. If you look at someone who never allows shoes in their home, and you look at when they get their carpet cleaned and you look at the water after about a year, it's a little bit gray. It's a little bit dirty. When you look at someone who does have shoes in their home and they get their carpets cleaned, it's black. So the best thing, first and foremost, let's stop the bleeding. Let's mitigate at the source. So that's where we want to be mindful of not having shoes in the home. We want to make sure our range hood where we're cooking is venting properly. So what we want to do is we want to do a tissue test. Take a paper towel, put your range hood on fan speed 1 or fan speed 2, hold it up, and make sure it's sucking it up. And then make sure that range hood is venting outside. Often it's venting into the cabinet above or into the attic or into the wall cavity. It's not actually venting out of your home. So you're moving it from your kitchen to another room. You're not solving the problem. So making sure your ventilation works. And then when you're cooking, if weather permits it, open a few windows. Like indoors is the new concept for humans. Cooking indoors, very new. So high heat protein creates PAH. Where does all that go? The bacon smells delicious. That odor lingers for hours. There's harmful particulates that happen as a byproduct of high heat and protein when you cook. All that is now getting trapped in your furniture, into your clothing, into your bedding, into your sheets. So allowing the source of the indoor pollutants to be minimized is a great first step. So I open windows like a ton when I'm cooking. We use our barbecue a lot. When the weather allows us to, we got one of those flat pans. So we even cook our eggs out there. Like cook outside as much as you can. When you are cooking inside, if you can open windows, do that. If you're cooking inside and you don't want to open your windows, use your range hood. Use a high speed. No, even if you're cooking olive oil and asparagus, like The more you can take those cooking particulates and have them not trapped in your home, this is a big deal. Same goes for your bathroom fans. Make sure do that same tissue test on your bathroom fans. Make sure they're pulling. At least 50% of bathroom fans and range hoods aren't doing their job properly. If your range hood's not doing its job properly, you might just need to clean it, take down the grate, give it a wipe down. You should do that once a year anyway. If it's not working, it's worth it to look at replacing your HVAC, replace your range hood, or at least making sure it's venting outside. Same goes for your bathroom fans. Upgrading a bathroom fan is like $200. It's not a big deal. If you have an attic, make sure your bathroom fans are venting outside. So a lot of people, their bathroom fans dump into the attic, especially in the Northeast, Northeastern United States, Southeastern in Canada. They vent into the attic, and then the attic's not breathing properly, so you get a bunch of mold. You ideally have that bathroom fan going up and out. So, and then when you are showering, getting a bathroom fan that either has a humidistat to detect humidity or one with a timer, so you can run that bathroom fan for 2 hours after your shower. Because think about all the moisture that's sitting in your shower, and think about how much moisture is accumulating in your towel. All of that is just evaporating right into your home and massively increasing your humidity load. So first things first is let's look at getting the cooking particulate out. Let's get the humidity out. Also, water filtration is also air filtration, because if you have a lot of chlorine in your water, when you shower at high heat, that's all getting aerosolized. So the best would obviously be having a whole home water filtration system. If you don't have that, or that's not in the budget, those couple $100 shower chlorine filters are really effective at mitigating for chlorine, which I'm looking at it from an air perspective. Still, it's good for your skin, it's good for your hair, but it's also not creating all those chlorine aerosols in your home. So I always like to look at source stuff first. Otherwise, the filtration is going to handle the symptoms of bad air. And now that we've created a problem, we have to deal with it. But like decreasing the pollutants, using better, water and vinegar, or companies like Branch Basics, not using the Winduxes and the Windex, the Clorox, the Lysol, like upgrading your cleaning products to low tox or non-tox cleaning products. So first things first, I just want to start there, because that's the big battle. Is just like let's lessen our polluting. Minimizing carpets in your home. Awesome. The least carpets you have is better. If you do have carpets, getting them steam cleaned. Now, when you call a steam cleaning company to get your carpet steam cleaned, it's a fortune. It could be like $700-800. However, a lot of them have membership programs. Get this. We recently paid $500 to get all of our upholstery, furniture, and carpet steam cleaned. We signed up for an annual plan. It's $300 for quarterly visits. So they want that recurring revenue. So for them to come like a couple times a year on an annual plan, the cost of steam cleaning goes way down. Getting your ducts cleaned every couple of years. If you filter your air, you can really stretch that out to like every 4 years, because your air filters are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And it's like, so those are the big ones. Cooking, bathroom vents, shoes inside, less toxic stuff. These are easy wins that people can implement like right away. Now, when we want to go beyond that, air filtration. That's great too. So one of the frustrating parts about being in the air quality testing business is like, it's like if you check the average person who's eating the average American diet and you do like a bunch of blood testing, like I bet you almost never it's good, like it's what the doctor tells you is the doctor only calls you, they test your blood for like 6 things and like, we'll call you if you're dying. But like what they consider good or normal, they keep sliding the scale of what normal is to base normal on average. It's like everyone's sliding off the cliff together. Like that's not okay. So when I was testing people's air, I'm like, wow, like pretty much nobody had good indoor air. It always had a lot of pollen, dust mites. When we would test a lot of people's carpets for pollen in the middle of winter, there would be pollen. Like once it gets in, it can't get out. It's trapped. It's embedded in your environment. When you're looking at filtering your air, the bedroom is definitely the most important place, because the only thing keeping you alive all night long is air. I call sleep healing time. and you're not eating food, you're not drinking water. The only thing sustaining your life is air. And imagine your body is trying to heal, it's trying to recover, consolidate memories, repair itself. Now, if it's breathing a million particles of dust, of pollen, of mold, VOCs, it's still playing defense all night long. Your lungs are working overtime. If you turn your bedroom into a clean air sanctuary, all of a sudden, ah, you can heal, you can optimize, you can get parasympathetic. One of my favorite things that I never thought would happen when I started Jaspr. I originally created Jaspr just for wildfire smoke. I wasn't even thinking about being in health and wellness, and I'm very glad that I am. But people who suffer from really bad seasonal allergies, their allergies often go away, like almost entirely. Because right now you're getting beat down by mold and pollen. It's 24 hours a day. There's just as much mold inside as outside, if not more. And it's there all year long. So you go outside, you're breathing pollution. You're in your house, you're breathing pollen and mold and pollution. You go to bed, you're still breathing it. Our human bodies are incredibly resilient, but 24 hours a day, it's that chronic beatdown where when you turn your bedroom and your home into a clean air sanctuary, you can go outside and handle pollen for a few hours. You can sleep at a hotel that has mold. Your environmental resilience will get really strong. It's just that chronic beatdown 24 hours a day that really wears on people. So I see people's seasonal allergies almost disappear by cleaning in air. So I'll take a moment, see what thoughts you have, and then I can speak to what's the difference with all these air filters anyway.
Yeah, well, I think that's important. And I talk about this a lot on the podcast. What creates chronic health issues is not the thing, but the load. And I think what Mike's trying to explain here is that stress on a system is not bad. We need stress on the system. Yeah, I work out every day, stress the muscle tissue, but that stress on the muscle tissue allows it to then break down, recover, be bigger, stronger later. I don't do the same activity, same exercise day in, day out, or I wouldn't allow that tissue to recover. It's stressing the tissue and now allowing recovery. And what Mike's talking about here is, hey, if you can create an environment, especially from a sleep or where you're spending the most time, where you've got cleaner air and less exposure, then it allows for recovery time, and especially sleep time, because we're spending probably 7-8 hours in our bedroom sleeping, trying to rest and recover. So if we have less of a load there, less stress on the system, we're able to recover. So I think that's the key. And that kind of goes along with everything else we talk about from a health perspective. The key is it's not the thing often, but the load. And I think that goes to even from a mold perspective. There are people that live in families that live in a home that has some mold in it. And yet one person's significantly sick. Some people are mildly sick and one person doesn't have any impact of it. If it was just the mold was the only issue, everybody should be sick to the same level across the board, but that's not the case. Some people, maybe one of the people in the house works out, eats pretty healthy, has a lot of downtime, lower stress, but somebody else, maybe mom, more stressed out, more activity,
Right.
more personal products on their hair, on their skin, on their body. And so their load, physical, chemical, emotional, microbial, is greater and it's excessive and they just can't manage anymore. So now we get the inflammatory processes kicking up. Now we've got this chronic, what we call cell danger response, and a chronic downregulation of thyroid physiology that makes us feel and not function well and results in not just thyroid issues, but gut issues, sex hormone regulation issues, infertility issues. Allergies is one of those things. And I would say this, Mike, since I've got the system, like one of the things that led me to it was we live in what's called the mushroom capital of the world in southeastern Pennsylvania, Kent Square area. This is where, like, if you're buying mushrooms,
I did not know that.
they're probably coming from here. And the air quality, everybody who comes out this way, like, oh my gosh, because it's the heat and the stuff that they use to grow the mushrooms, so the particulates a bit. So I started getting more allergy, sneezing, congestion. And one of the reasons I was like, okay, I want to get something, a different type of filtration system for the home. And since I've gotten the Jaspr system, less stuffiness, less congestion, the two things that have happened. One, we did put the Jaspr system in, and that's been a change. I did put another system on my HVA system that I thought was going to be a thing, I think it's like an infrared ozone system. So we can talk about that in a couple
Yeah.
minutes. Um, but the other time when I'm really pretty good is when I'm up in the mountains, and I'm not because I spend when I'm up in the mountains, and so let's say it's during hunting season, archery season, I'm spending 8, 10, 12 hours out in nature, not a sneeze, not a, nothing. Come home, sit in my home office. And now that I'm here, all day and work from home, I was getting more allergy stuff I never really had before. But since we put the Jaspr system in, I haven't noticed that in my, those are the two things I noticed. And I would say, like
What
we were
room? What
talking,
room is it in?
well, right. I've moved it to some of the different rooms. I had it in the bedroom for a bit, and I just wanted to kind of see how maybe some of the change in different rooms and systems. Right now I have it in my gym, which is the basement. Interesting little side note is there's really no dust down there anymore. Like, and so you're like, oh, before, um, I was I had to dust that space pretty frequently, but now there really isn't any dust accumulation. So it's doing something different than, as you were saying, talking about before, uh, than my furnace filter was doing. So definitely, um, there's been a change and been an impact. So when I first got home, we put it in the bedroom, but I wanted to just move it to different areas and see what I noticed, see what I could sense from what the machine was doing. So, but I definitely think it's been a good thing. I gave one to my son, and I think we're going to talk about how the units work and maybe why maybe one may be enough or maybe not enough. So we'll talk about it in a bit, but let's get into the different systems, what's available. We don't have to necessarily knock any individual company. And granted, everybody's listening. Mike's got his own company,
Yeah.
but it's important to know. And these are questions I asked Mike as well when we met out in uh, Arizona, which was like, what is somebody supposed to be looking for? How do we know what's a good system, what's not a good system? I would say, and Mike would probably say, well, my system's good, but there are,
No, there's lots of good ones.
there's,
There's lots of good ones actually.
so what are the things that the key things somebody needs to be aware of that distinguishes a good quality one from a lesser quality one to one that's just junk?
Yeah, so there's a few things. And there's a lot of good machines out there. It's really personal preference, it's budget, it's a lot of stuff. So also it's how you use it too. So if the one in your basement, for example, if you don't hear it in your basement, if it's just, down there and it's not a noise issue, I wouldn't keep it on smart mode. I'd actually leave it on fan speed 2 or 3. I'll put it on the highest speed where you don't hear it because your HVAC's job is to mix the air throughout the whole home. Even if it's in your basement, it's still contributing to cleaner air in your whole home.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you put a Jaspr in your bedroom. It's going to give your bedroom like 95 to 99% cleaner air, but it's still going to give your whole home like 20% cleaner air because your HVAC system is mixing the air throughout the home. So then let's say you had one in another bedroom. Now those two bedrooms are going to be 95 to 99%, and the whole home's going to have 40% cleaner air. Because just like that bathtub with the food coloring, the air in your home is not isolated. Your home is kind of one unit, which shares air. It mixes it around. So the unit in your basement, if you can actually run it on fan speed 2 or 3, especially when you're not even down there, it's going to make the air cleaner in your whole home by a greater amount. For people who leave it in their living room where they spend time, smart mode for sure, because then it's going to be silent. But when it detects cooking or cleaning products, it's going to ramp up by itself. If it's in a bedroom, I'm a big fan of fan speed 2 on dark mode, a little bit of white noise. I actually like a lot of white noise, so I move mine up to fan speed 3 in dark mode, because that way I'm getting even cleaner air in my bedroom at night. So what's the difference between all these things? So if we look at most effective machines, it's what I used to use when I was doing fires, floods, and mold cleanup. They're called air scrubbers. The good news is they're the best by far. The bad news is they're very loud, they're very ugly, they're very industrial. So, if the only goal of a car was to tow things, everybody would drive a full-ton pickup truck. But sometimes you might, or a minivan, if the goal is just to haul people around. But along came the SUV because not everybody wanted to drive a minivan because of the way they look, because of the way they drove, the experience. So you have really effective air purifiers, with the downside being loud, ugly, and expensive. You have really inexpensive air purifiers. The positive is they're inexpensive. The downside is they're ineffective. You have air filtration systems that are, and let's just look at like $0 to $100. I'm just going to call that the useless category. These things do nothing. And the analogy I like to use is getting one of those teeny tiny air purifiers. It's trying to like heat your bathtub with a kettle. If you've ever tried, it doesn't work, because the water is going to cool down faster than you can heat it up. You literally cannot heat a bathtub with a kettle. You're pouring all this boiling water in, but the water is cold. What's going on here? It will not be warm enough to take a bath, because the tool is too small to get the job done. You're trying to make a cup of tea, it's a great tool. It's the best tool. So that's kind of what the little air purifiers are like. They're over marketed, but they're way too small to get the job done. It'd be like trying to tow your boat with a golf cart. It's not going to work. So unfortunately, that's why most people say they buy air filters and they're like, is this thing even working? I don't even know. They don't change the filter because they never bought the difference. They're like just hoping it works. The best review that makes me very happy that we get constantly is, I've owned tons of air purifiers in the past, and Jaspr is the first one that I didn't wonder if it worked. So there's a lot of sneaky lab studies that companies can do to make things look efficacious and effective. Here's a few of those tricks. Number one, they test the filter outside of the machine. So if I have an air purifier the size of a water bottle, too small to get the job done, but I just test the filter by itself, sure, it could be 99.99% effective at filtering particles, but it's not moving enough air to do anything. So that's one sneaky study. Another one is they put them in very controlled environments. Also, if you see an air purifier, they say, how many square feet does it cover? Red flag. Air purifiers don't care about square foot. They care about cubic volume, which is the volume of the air. So if you have 8-foot ceilings versus 16-foot ceilings, it's going to be half as effective or twice as effective. It's not a Roomba. It doesn't care about the floor space. It cares about the volume of air. And when they talk about, 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet or 600 square feet, they don't tell you how clean the air is going to be. So does coverage mean 5% cleaner? For me, I think if you're saying it covers a certain amount of space, I like it to be at least 80% cleaner air. That's kind of my threshold, which is why even though Jaspr is like 4 times bigger than a lot of those little machines you see at Walmart or Target or Amazon, our square footage is the same because our standards are different. So now when you look at so 0 to 100, 0 to 200, I just call that kind of the useless category. In that 200 to 400 range, you can get a nice small air purifier. The downsides are it's only going to be good for a bedroom, and you're going to have to keep it on full speed all the time. It might have bright
It's
lights.
about the air volume it's pushing through the
Yes.
filtration system.
Yeah. So another thing that we actually just put on our website in our specs, people talk about airflow as in just max airflow. So whenever they're telling you how many square feet they cover, they're telling you as if it was on full speed. They're not telling. Whereas your air filter should be running on the lowest speed 99% of the time. So Jaspr's peak CFM is about 400 at the cubic feet per minute. At the lowest speed where it's silent is still about 100, 110. A lot of air filters, their peak speed is 90 or 100. Their lowest speed is about 20. So, you can totally get away with like a $300-400 air filter in your bedroom, but you might need some tape to cover up the lights, and you're gonna have to keep it on full speed all the time, because on a lower fan speed, it's just not going to be doing anything. So where Jaspr is uniquely positioned is a couple things. Number one, we made it from steel. My background being in restoration, we made it very commercial grade. So I was trying to make like one of those air scrubbers, but something that you would put inside your home. So it had to be made from steel, commercial grade parts, which is why we have a lifetime warranty, because we can. Very responsive sensors. So as soon as you start cooking, cat uses the litter box, cleaning. Your neighbor 10 doors down is having a bonfire, barbecuing. It's very responsive. So that way it can be silent and it can be detecting air quality in real time. And then the size. The size is really what matters. Almost every filter on every machine is going to be a HEPA standard. That's not the issue. Companies get really sneaky pretending that they have the best filter. Most filters are almost the exact same. The thing is, how much air can they really move? So you want something that's large, that can move enough airflow. And most of the other large air filters, they're just ugly and loud. So we kind of went for the intersection of effective, beautiful, and steel. We have cold rolled matte steel. So what happens is it absorbs the light. Plastic reflects the light. And plastic is just so unenvironmentally friendly, and they often have like a 1 year warranty that you're changing your air filter every 2 or 3 years instead of having one machine. Like when we build Jaspers, we expect them to last about 25 to 30 years. So I'm expecting to replace everyone's machine every 20 to 25 years or so. Sometimes they break sooner. We replace those too. And I think the warranty is also a really big deal. You know, a product is only as good as the company that supports it. So as proud as I am of the Jaspr itself, I'm just as proud of the company. Let's say your Jaspr breaks. Doesn't matter if it's 4 months later or 4 years later. We ship you a new one the next day. You take the new one out of the box. You put the old one back in the box. So no, you don't have to keep the box. Inside the box, you'll already find a prepaid shipping label from UPS. And then we schedule UPS to come to your front porch and pick it up the next day. Because our philosophy is if your Jaspr breaks, that's our fault. And I hate when I buy a product, it has a warranty. And then I need to they want the box. They want the original receipt. They want me to jump through hoops. They want me to get an obscure shaped box. They want me to go to FedEx. I'm like, I just lost a day of my life trying to send you back your broken product. And I paid for shipping? What's going on here? So ultimately, if someone's really budget conscious and wants a small purifier for their bedroom, it's still going to be useful. It's still going to be effective. You just have to keep it on full speed all the time. But if that's what's in the budget, it's still going to do a really great job. I found myself traveling without my Jaspr and running to a Walmart to buy a few $100 Honeywell, running back to my hotel room and putting it on full speed. So we were going for that sweet spot of quiet, effective, and beautiful. But if not all those things are important to you, there's a range of options. So hopefully that was a good job at kind of explaining the whole landscape.
So how does somebody know from a like volume perspective, like, okay, I've got a 4,000 square foot home.
Yeah.
And let's use the Jaspr as an example. Obviously you say, hey, you can put that in your bedroom, but if they really want to do the best for their home, how much do they need? Multiple units? Do they need how do they figure it out? Like, cause right now what the one I have is in the basement. You're like, hey, you could put that on higher fan speeds, not going to annoy you because it's in the basement, but it's going to help do more of the house. But what is the standard? How does somebody figure out how much they need to deal with the volume in their home?
The simplified way to look at it, when $1,000 air purifier, expensive, but we give huge quantity discounts. A few $1,000s for a whole home air filtration system, not that expensive. Like if you get a whole home water filtration system, you're going to be spending $7 to $10 grand, and then several $100s a year on maintenance and filters. You change the filters in your car. So like air purifier expensive, better sleep cheap. So I actually think about Jaspr like a Sonos system. It's like, back in the day, you'd have to have one really large speaker in the middle of your living room. So like you'd either have the music would be way too loud in that living room and then way too quiet in the other rooms, but you could still feel the bass pounding. Then along came Sonos. You could have speakers in each room with a reasonable volume in all the rooms. So it's a decentralized whole home system. It was just a way better way to approach whole home sound, is having multiple speakers instead of one giant one. So the same thing applies to clean air. And you don't have to exactly measure the square footage for your Sonos or the cubic volume. And sound moves through air too. So it's also a volume situation. Now, simply, a Jaspr in a bedroom is going to do a great job. and then a Jasper in your living room where you spend the most time. So it's going to be kind of near the kitchen where it's like you want to put the air cleaning where you're spending all your time. So if you have one in the bedrooms and then you have one in the main living space, you're going to be good. If you have a massive great room that's like a 2,000 square foot great room with 16-foot vaulted ceilings at the lodge, you'll need two. It's pretty simple. So like one for the bedrooms, because those ones you're going to keep on fan speed 2 and dark mode. If you love complete silence, keep it on smart mode. It's no problem. It'll still be effective, but fan speed 2 will be better. And I actually keep all my bedroom models on fan speed 2 24 hours a day, because the ones in the bedroom throughout the day, we don't hear them in the main part of the house. So I leave all of those running fan speed 2 24 hours a day. And then the one in my living room, I leave that one on smart mode 24 hours a day. So that's just kind of the simple way to think about it. And then, yeah, like we heavily discount them on the system level. So that's really the way I think about it.
So put air filtration in the where you sleep, and then where you spend the most time. Makes sense.
But
There,
like starting, if the most important one where you're going to have the most immediate impact is going to be one in your bedroom for sure. Ideally with your door shut at night. Like huge difference. If the average bedroom has about 1 million particles floating around, the dust, the skin cells, the hair, insect parts, mold, pollen, all of it. When I run a Jaspr with my particle counter, in about 30 minutes, we have 95% less stuff in the air. So your lungs are just like, all of a sudden, if you put it in your bedroom and then you take it out, you'll like some people have a panic attack. And I'm starting to get them into hotels. I travel with mine, like literally the huge amount, because the bedroom's not that big and you spend the most time there and you sleep there. So it's quite life-changing, clean air in the bedroom. That's the place to start. And if budget's not an issue and air quality is of high priority, then yeah, you get 3 or 4 throughout the house.
what would be an indication for somebody that the system they have may not be doing what they think it's doing?
When you say system, you mean whatever their existent
Yeah,
air
they
filter
say, hey,
is?
I've got this, maybe I've got this air system or this, other system, and they think it's doing, they spent good money on this system. What would be key indicators that maybe it's not doing what you think it's doing? How would is dust like the thing that they're going to be able to determine, hey, if there's dust, if my bedroom is pretty dusty, this thing's not probably doing what it should be doing? Or is there something else that would clue them in? Because it's tough with health issues like, hey, how's your sleep? Is it better? There may be other factors that affect it, but what would be a key that somebody who says, hey, I bought this system,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's working or not. How do they know?
Well, number one, I wouldn't recommend getting one that doesn't have a sensor that shows you the air quality on the screen. That was another big part of the difference. If it's not showing you what the air is in real time, half the benefit of a good air filter is also the air education. It's learning what spikes it. Oh, whoa, the candles. Oh, when I open my windows, that's a polluted day. So for me, a unit that doesn't have a screen that shows you the air quality in real time, you'll have no way to assess how effective it is. Also, when you put it in, did you feel a difference? Like if you have city water and you put a water filtration system in, your skin's gonna get better, your hair is gonna get better, the water is gonna taste better. Your body will know almost immediately. It will be a significant difference. Now, when you put an air filter in your bedroom, like we just did a sleep study back in August. 100 people put Jaspers in their bedroom who were using Aura rings, and the average person slept 25 minutes more per night, 18% deeper sleep. They fell asleep 5 minutes faster. It's very obvious. If it's not very obvious, that is a good sign for you, which is why we call our return program the life-changing guarantee. It's like if it's not so obvious that your life is better, return it. And almost nobody does. Because when people are putting these little residential grade air purifiers in the room, that's good for a dorm. Homes have too much air volume in them. So it should be a felt sense. First of all, if you have a smart sensor with the air in real time, you're going to see when you cook how it's going to go up, how it's going to go down. If you light incense, if you burn candles, you're going to see it instantly every single time. If you run a humidifier, you're going to see the particulate going up and down. Then when it comes to the sleep, your sleep quality should be incredibly noticed. Like it will be visceral, the sleep difference. I always say there's one downside of putting a Jaspr in your bedroom and in your home. You'll become an air snob. All of a sudden, the chemicals in the Uber are going to be more intolerable. Airbnbs, hotels, shopping malls, your family's homes, everywhere you're going to go, you're like, the air here feels heavy, feels dusty. It feels difficult to breathe. If all of a sudden the air is feeling worse everywhere you go and you're sleeping better, but it should be a felt sense. If it's not a knowing, then you should return it.
Okay. So let's talk about, I wanted to touch base on this, and then we'll talk a little bit more maybe about the Jaspr system directly. But for a while, these things were, there's two things I want to talk about. One is the these systems that you put on the HVAC that are supposed to clean the air. They're like an infrared and ozone. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Very well.
Do these things, what do they do? Do they work? Do they not work?
All right. So typically there's various types of electronic cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I look at it is whether it's NASA, the space station, or a surgical operating room, everybody uses HEPA. No one's moved to these electronic cleaning systems because they're not that effective, but they are really good at one thing. The downside for a lot of them is some of them actually create ozone, almost all of them, which can come with its own harmful factors. The thing that they do really good, a UV light, that is, UV light is really good at preventing mold growth with the things that it's coming in contact with. So UV light's really good for water when you have a water tank where the water's sitting in that tank. UV light's really good for, the toothbrush, for the phone cleaning. It's great because it has adequate contact exposure time. There's a reason we don't put a UV light in the Jaspr. UV light does nothing for air because the air passes through it way too fast. So it has it's like when you wash your hands. We all learned during COVID, wash your hands for 20 seconds. If you wash your hands for 1 second, it doesn't really do much. The bacteria hasn't had enough exposure time to be clean. Where the UV light can be effective, though, is when it's actually in your HVAC system where there's humidity, it will prevent mold growth from occurring in the system. So in the system. So like if people were, especially in a very humid environment, when that HVAC system turns off, mold growth can occur, condensation can happen. So a UV light like upstream in the actual like air handling unit is really good in an area where mold is an issue because it's going to prevent mold growth from occurring there. And then the mold growth, that if mold grows there, well, that can be an air quality problem. It's amazing in those ice machines. Those ice machines always get moldy. If you put a UV light in there, it won't get moldy. Mold can't grow in the presence of UV light. It's like the sun. It's like creating the outside environment inside. But it's not going to it's very gimmicky to say it's going to clean all of the air in your whole home, but it will clean the surfaces within a small radius, which can be effective.
Okay. So let's talk mold, because that's
Sure.
a hot topic today.
Sure is.
Everybody thinks they have mold-related illness. A lot of people have mold exposure. What can an air filtration system like Jaspr do from a mold perspective? And I want to preface this for the people that are listening. Mold is a sign of a problem before it is the problem. So what I mean by that is if you've got mold growing and high amounts of mold growing and developing, it's growing because there's a reason it's growing there. It's an environment that's healthy for it. So you could say, well, I'll just remediate the mold and do something to get rid of the mold. But the reality is that if the environment stays the same, it's coming back. And so you haven't really addressed anything at all. It's the same thing if you're excessively stressed out and then do a GI protocol to help your gut, and then you didn't change the emotional stress or the other stressors that created it. That's what's going to happen when the gut protocol is done. Within 30 days to 90 days, you're probably going to have the same gut symptoms again because you didn't change the environment. So that's what we're talking about today. How can using a good air filtration system like a Jaspr help in a situation where somebody might have more moisture, more mold development?
All right, mold. So it's definitely a hot topic, and I think it's going to get more hot before it finds its place. But I often say mold is the new Lyme. Like anyone with
It is.
unknown illnesses,
It's
the
mold.
amount of people are saying I have mold illness now, people want something to point to and say this is my problem.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, if I always tell friends, if you're in a lease and you want to break it, call me. I'll come over. I'll find the mold. You got mold. I can find it in anyone's house. You just need to know where to look, but it's there. Um, Especially a home, there's going to be humidity buildup somewhere. There's going to be a leak somewhere. We'll find the mold. It's not if you have it or not. It's what's the mold load? What is the species? It is definitely a symptom of high humidity and poor airflow. And then not all mold is the same. And there's nothing more sad than someone who feels unwell, goes to a functional medicine doc, gets a urine or a blood test for mycotoxins and mold. They go, I got the mold. Then they call an environmental guy to come to their house, swab their dust, say, I got the mold, aspergillus. And then they start doing investigative demolition in their home looking for the mold. This is like going to do investigative surgery to look for cancer in your body. Let's just cut a hole here, cut a hole there, biopsy this, biopsy that to see if there's some cancer cells in you. We know there's some risks of cutting ourselves open. But meanwhile, I call it whack-a-mold. You're trying to just hack open various parts of your home looking for mold. Now, if you have black, visible mold growing, you definitely want to take care of that. And I would get no less than 3 restoration quotes. There are 2 sayings in the mold industry. One is mold is gold. The other is the mold rush. A contractor who's used to getting paid $1,000 to demolish a bathroom can get $12,000 or $20,000 to do the exact same job with a little bit of extra protocol if there's mold there. So don't think that the $80,000 quote is necessarily better than the $3,000 quote. And there are multiple types of mold tests. Some skew false negative, some skew false positive. If we test the dust in your home, we're always going to find some mold in it because mold is outside, mold is inside, mold is everywhere. A good mold test should test the outdoor air and the indoor air at the same time. It's called a control sample. We're looking to see how much more mold is there inside than outside because there's a lot of mold outside. And then a lot of, like, if you have bad water, do you A, get a water filter, or B, remove all the pipes in your home? So a lot of people, they're cutting open their walls, they're moving out for 6 months, they're moving into apartments that are probably moldier than their own house, dealing with all the stress, the financial stress, the emotional stress, living in this rental home for a long period of time. And rental properties are the least well-maintained. It's sad. It's a big problem. And the 80-20, like if you have visible physical black mold, get a few restoration quotes. Don't feel bad about wasting the restoration guy's time. You need to have a few conversations about it. And you want to remove the mold, and you want to remove, about 2 feet around the mold. And then you want to figure out, why did you get mold in the first place? Usually when there's a leak, it's usually a water source. So, you want to stop the drip, stop the roof leak, or it could be a general humidity issue, which might mean, you need better bathroom fans. You need better ventilation. You need to open the window when you shower. Your house needs to breathe more. Filtering your air is also very effective. So my wife and I, Rachel, before we were married in 2018, we moved into this house, and we leased the house when we were traveling, sight unseen. We moved in, moldy, real mold, visible mold, on black mold on the walls, on the windowsills. The moving truck already had all of our stuff there. It was a 1-year lease. I tested the air, super moldy. I did a surface clean. Now, I know a little bit about mold, so I was able to deal with it. the funny thing is, it was the exact same time that I was developing Jasper. So within a couple of weeks, I had about 6 or 7 HEPA air filters running in my basement. And when they were running in the basement, we did another mold test. And by the way, for the first couple of weeks, I was sleeping 10 hours a night, waking up exhausted. I had exercise induced asthma. If I would run, I would wheeze. I'd be on the floor thinking I was going to die and I'd never get a breath again. It was bad. Sleep quality bad. Inflammation bad. Allergies, skin stuff. It was rough. I had the 6 air purifiers running in the basement, and our mold levels went from really high to almost nothing. It's like if you test the water, chlorine, you add the chlorine filter, then there's virtually none. So like HEPA is amazing for mold. It's really effective. So if there's a mold problem, the first thing you can do is get a few air filtration units in your home. At least now you're filtering the air, because you're not eating the mold, you're not drinking the mold, you're not rubbing the mold on your skin. So the only way the mold is impacting you is by breathing it. So yes, you want to detox the body. Yes, you want to remove the source. But oftentimes you just have high airborne levels of mold. And the only ways to deal with that is controlling humidity, better airflow, and then the catch all is going to be air filtration. And whether you're a tenant and you can't control the environment, air filtration is the only option, or you own the home. Like, I think drinking filtered water and breathing filtered air are just table stakes for health. I think it is the most effective. The gym takes a lot of willpower. Eating healthy food takes a lot of willpower. Definitely do that. But air and water are the things you consume the most of. They take no willpower, just investment. Once you've invested, even if you bought 4 Jaspers, it's going to be like $2,500, and then you're going to be at like $4 a day for clean air for life guaranteed. It's like less than the friggin' Starbucks. So it's expensive, sure, but like, what's really expensive? Paying 80 grand to remediate your moldy house. That's not even that moldy. And the turmoil on your family, and I see people spending hundreds of thousands on mold problems that could have been solved by a few air filters, because they didn't have a big problem. So I know that was sort of all over the place. That's just my general mold rant. But these are a lot of the things that I've seen and experienced.
Yeah. And I'd agree with most of that. For a lot of people, I want to say this with some caution. Like if you think you've got a mold issue and you get a urine mycotoxin test done, that tells you have some exposure. That does not mean that's illness. It doesn't mean that that's the problem. Matter of fact, if you know you have mold exposure and you didn't have urine mycotoxins, I'd be more concerned, because that would tell me that you're not filtering those things out of your system. So if you want to know if your immune inflammatory process is driven by those things, there are antibody type testing that you can do to say, okay, I'm developing antibodies to to Stachybotrys. That would tell you every time you're in contact.
That's a bad one.
Yeah, that you're triggering an immune response, right? So there's kind of like the big 3 when we think about the things that are going to drive it. And if you're producing antibodies to that, then yeah, anytime you're exposed, you're probably going to have an upregulation. You should probably clean those things anyway. There's ways to test for antibodies to some of these aflatoxins that, hey, when I inhale these aflatoxins, they're triggering an immune inflammatory defense response. But a lot of us absorb, we breathe some of these things in, we get it into our system, our body cleans it, clears it, filters it, and it's not an issue. So just because you have positive urine mycotoxins in a urine doesn't mean that that's the underlying cause of your health issue. So be cautious as you go through it. And I've had patients that they have had more significant issues in their home, and it's definitely triggered immune reactivity or loss of tolerance to these things, because we all have a certain tolerance to these things, and then we lose our tolerance. And what Mike was talking about before is that by filtering your air, you actually create some resistance. You get some stress from the environment, but then you're in an environment where it's cleaner and you get a chance for your immune system to kind of recover a little bit. It's the chronic exposure that creates typically more of the issue. So that little tidbit there. So Mike,
I agree with that.
Let's finish up with your system. We'll hit on what makes it unique. And then if somebody's interested in learning more about the Jaspr system, where can they go?
So I think I spoke enough to the differences, and I think for somebody, the source stuff, right? The shoes, make sure the vents are working, using better products. These are the easy low-hanging fruits you can do right now. The carpet cleaning, the duct cleaning, the blocking and tackling. This is the simple stuff that is really important. The shower filter head for the chlorine. These are like easy steps. Now, with the air filtration thing, simply put, Jasper is the perfect balance of effective, beautiful, really good sensors, and a really great warranty. If aesthetic is not important to you, not that important. There's something else. Personally, I like something that looks good in my house because of its cylindrical design. You can put it against the wall. You can put it in the corner. It doesn't have to, if they have those two-sided intakes, it has to be a foot from each wall and it's sitting in the middle of your house. But to me, it's functional furniture. It has to look good. It has to be quiet. It has to be low headache, no apps. So no Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi, no EMF. I think that's important too. If somebody wants to just like learn more about general air stuff, our website is a great resource. Our Instagram is a good resource. And I think this podcast is going to come out pretty soon in January. So what we're going to do is Jasper's normally $11.99. I'm going to create a code, Dr. Eric. Code Dr. Eric will be live for 2 weeks after the date the podcast comes out. So today, and it'll be $400 off. And when you add more Jaspers to your cart, we even apply bigger and bigger discounts. So they can get as cheap as like, $11.99 is our retail price. They get as low as $6.69 or $6.70. But even just for one would be about $7.99. So that would be the low hanging, low hanging fruit is one for the bedroom. And if it's not making a big difference for you, return it. So yeah, so the day that this comes out for the first 2 weeks, and Jaspr is JASPR.co. There's no E. So JASPR.co. There's no M in Tom and there's no E in Jasper. Jasper.co with code Dr. Eric, and that'll be $400 off. And that will stack with any discounts on our website. So for anybody out there, the fundamentals are the most important. But if Jaspr speaks to you and you're interested in trying it out and you want to get clean air in your home, give it a shot. We'd love to have you.
So one final question.
Sure.
Where'd the name Jaspr come from?
The Jaspr came from a mountain in Canada. It's 3 hours north. I know you're a hunter. There's some world-class hunting there. It's about 3 hours north of Banff in Lake Louise in Alberta, Canada. Jaspr is the city I went to before I did one of the biggest fire restoration projects I've ever done. The air there, except for when there's wildfire season, the air there is so clean. Companies bottle the air and sell it to China.
Get out of here.
It's a beautiful mountain with beautiful springs, hot springs, and has some of the cleanest air in the world. And I'm from Canada, so that is why it is called Jaspr.
Got it. All right.
But no E.
Mike, thanks so much for coming on the Thyroid Answers podcast. And I think you've given the listeners a whole bunch of easy things they can do and more information on how to get cleaner, purer, better quality air. So thanks so much, Mike, for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate you.